Live now. Hot. Mike's hot. I didn't even get a chance to, and by didn't get a chance, I mean, totally forgot and didn't prioritize. Going to look at my my previous VOD so I can see how the compressor sounds. So whoops. I was listening through on X-Ray stream when I was playing Apex with him last night, but I don't have a compressor on my mic, just through OBS. All right. And share to Twitter? Ooh. Do I remember my Twitter username? Social media is hard, bro. Did I tell you that I switched over? Yeah, I did tell you that I switched over to iPhone.
Yeah.
I'm a huge fan, dude. I'm a huge fan. This new one is fucking nice. The camera is incredible. I just took a picture of myself. Okay, I took like 6 or 7 pictures of myself. But when I was choosing which one, I was going through and I was like, what the fuck?
How come I don't get any of the movies?
You never asked.
That's fair. Oh man. Fucking fish truck is in Fort Collins today.
That shit is so fucking good, bro.
Oh wait, no. Next Sunday.
Even better, you have time to prepare. And it's not the Super Bowl, so you can maybe make it.
Oh, it was yesterday.
Oh no, I forgot to put in hashtags.
Hashtag oopsie.
Does it let you edit it? Oh, it does. Check that shit out. Cheatsy. Wait, there's not a... Wait, there's not a... Okay, maybe iPhone is losing a little bit of... Oh, here we go. We're gonna do... I've always wanted to use the hashtag men in tights.
Tight. So I'm totes wearing PJ pants. Hope
That's
I don't
okay.
have to-
I'm wearing leggings, you'll be alright.
But look how professional I look. I did have my beard in a ponytail earlier, and it looked fucking dumb because the end just goes poof, like all over the place. So we're gonna scrap that for now.
Nice. I was gonna beard oil my beard, and then I got out of the shower. I combed it, and I was like, okay, Bo, okay.
Fucking curly shit at the end drives me crazy.
Shit. I think that's the social posts. Check the Snapchat. If I got. All right. Ready to go in 50 seconds?
No.
Out of this granola bar. I'm excited that you chose to be on this episode. I also find it hilarious that you also seem to be very well positioned to talk about this.
Glad I can fake it.
Fake it? What do you mean fake it? If anybody understands the difficulty of how we can no longer sustain a household with one full-time job, it is you.
I can do that one. Fuck, I didn't do my research like I wanted to.
Didn't do your what?
My research like I wanted to.
Well, good, because we're going to do it on the show. Write down your
Yeah.
questions. Stayed up all night playing Valheim.
Yeah, no, it's exactly it.
All right, we're gonna take a hit of ye old bong and then get the show on the road. I'm glad that when my timer's done, it just says live now and not like really pulsing, like get it done, because then I feel bad for.
Excuse me. God, I can't reach.
Now I'm done coughing my brains out. I'm gonna open a window real quick. Hot in here. I was Huck, what's up? Alicia, what's up? What's up? I was snuggled on the couch with the dog last night, and he was like laying on my chest, and the cat came up out of nowhere and just laid on his face. And what's on the? I think I put it on my Snapchat stories, but I laughed so hard that he was only there for a couple of minutes because it probably wasn't comfortable to be bounced around. All right, I'm gonna get this intro rolling. Let's see here. Where's the button? Where's the button? There's the button. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the show. Let's pause this music. Good to see everybody. Welcome to Sunday Tea with Bowborne and the Archers. This is episode 11. I'm going to talk about how there is a gigantic generational divide. We're going to talk about how that's kind of impacted a lot of people in terms of perspective, in terms of economically, in terms of personality, in terms of et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We're going to talk about a lot of cool shit. Fortunately, both me and our esteemed guest, we'll introduce here in a second, forgot to do our research in lieu of doing a bunch of video games, so we get to do it together, which was the point of the show. So, hey, is that wind too loud? What, Torgoth? Like, can you hear my wind right now?
Not really, no.
Okay. It's going crazy today. Well, speaking of Torgoth, let's introduce our guest here. We have the very, very, very good fortune of having someone very important on the show. This is Torgoth of Dundrum. He was once a humble farmer, but now he's the ruler of his own lands. Took time out of his busy day to join us here on our talk show. If you want to, we could totally go into the background of that name for these folks later. I will never ever not use that, bro. And every time somebody comes to me and asks me how to spell your LARP name, which is what that is, if anybody's curious, I will forever give them that whole ass story, forever.
You had them put it on my damn Lord title.
I know I did, and I would do it again, motherfucker. I would do it again. Oh man, I'll never forget the moment, the look on your face. The fucking pure sass in your grill when you turned around and glared at us when they read that off to you, bro. And the sheer confusion and look on their faces, too. They're like, what is happening? Yeah. Why is there so many fucking words right here? Well, cool. Well, let's dive into it here. So, kind of one of the biggest reasons I wanted to talk about this idea, this aspect, this generational divide, I find that as I review kind of the topics that I've done already, the topics that I want to do going forward, a lot of them seem to be based in various perspectives, which I didn't kind of realize the theme of until afterwards. But this is one that I wanted to also make sure that I hit, because how many times, raise your hand, everybody, if you fit this demographic, and don't worry, we'll cycle through them. If you fit this demographic, raise your hand. How many of you out there are millennials who have been out there? Slow down. who have been a part of a conversation, overheard a conversation about how millennials are lazy or entitled or right, or have everything handed to them, or the generation of participation trophies, which we'll come back to. The also, how many out there, raise your hand if you are of the Gen X and you get told that you are cold and calculating and unempathetic. How many of you out there are boomers who are told that you are just ignorant and stubborn and stuck in your ways and have no interest in contributing to society because you've already done enough? Lastly, my favorite, how many of you out there are Gen Z who get told that you don't pay attention enough and that you're not passionate about anything and about how you're too selfish and focused on yourself and how your content's never going to go anywhere because nobody gives a fuck about you? There's so many different stereotypes to all of the different generations. It's like clearly it's an example of human tribalism and how we classify each other in order to build divides so that we can keep ourselves safe. That's psychology. We went into that a whole ass other episode ago. But why does it all have to be such negative shit? Have you ever heard, Torgoth? Have you ever heard a situation where somebody was complimenting somebody based on their entire generation? Like, I have just a couple examples, but comparatively, it pales.
Yeah, most of the stereotyping based around generation is all largely negative.
Did I hit a lot of the stereotypes? Are there any of those generations that had stereotypes that we might have missed?
I don't think so.
Well, it's kind of a bullshit to classify a person by just the year that they were born in. Now, I will say, and I guess we'll get into it. Why don't we? Why don't we do generational tropes? I feel like that's the right word. Generational tropes. Oh, that's a TV show. TV tropes. Maybe that's why. A 16-year-old explains everything you need to know. That feels like, why don't we do this? Generational traits. Yeah, the strengths and weaknesses of every generation in your workforce. This one is, okay. So here's a good example. This one is immediately dividing people based on their generation with a application of their professional. Got my overlay over. I changed. Okay, so we should define the generations first. And this article does a very good job at doing that. So fortunately, we're going to be able to appropriate their hard work and information to save a little bit of time on our side. And we're all about that. So baby boomer, you're a baby boomer if you were born between... You're a baby boomer if you were born between 1946 and 1964. So basically, you're old as fuck.
My parents.
Yeah. And then you're Gen X if you are 1965 to 1976, and you are basically terribly afraid of being old as fuck. Also, wait, Gen Y? I've never heard Gen Y before. What the fuck?
Mm-hmm.
My mic. Oh, it's probably because I'm too far away from it. Thank you, Shishuna. For somebody who's bad with S's, that's not a like coinciding name, huh? I'm always gonna fuck that one up, I guess. Thank you so much for letting me know. Hey, let me know if it keeps happening because I just sat up closer to my mic. So millennials, Gen Y, whatever the fuck that is, 1977 to 1994. This feels a little broad. I've always heard it was like middle of the 80s.
Well, I'm noticing too that the year discrepancy is not even.
Oh, you mean like in terms of size of the years or whatever? All right.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to loosely trust the information on this article. Sure, they might have done the work for us, but for a website named Get Smarter, they're not giving us very solid information just yet. So, and then, yeah, because 1995 for Gen Z, are you fucking high? I always heard it was, I thought the whole point of it was that it was after 2000. Anyway,
No, I think your coming of age around the millennium is what the idea is.
oh, like you gain your access to your consciousness and memories and et cetera, et cetera. That's when, like, okay, that makes sense. Well, so, but the point is y'all get the idea, right? That there are gigantic segments of years that classify each individual based on the year that they were born, which we've talked in depth on the show about how classifying an entire group of people through one criteria is inherently kind of bullshit anyway. But you know, there could be useful information to be had. So let's kind of explore some of those traits. So the cool thing about this website is it does give us strengths and weaknesses. So the strengths of boomers, as y'all can see here, they're workaholics, they're good team players, and they're apparently really professional and make good mentors and leaders. Okay, which I would argue just comes with age. Like, I'm pretty sure all of these generations are going to be good at those things when they're old as fuck.
When they have the wisdom behind it, yeah.
All right. Their weaknesses. So here's where we should focus, I guess, on most of these, because this is kind of what we're talking about in terms of what we think. Well, I use we liberally here, but bullshit. So one of their weaknesses is they have a preference for structure and discipline, and they're not really flexible, which... and then we have another one, which is they're competitive. They need recognition and reward. And I'm already so triggered just reading these. Like, it's even hard for me not to be pissed at people. Like, I've definitely said to somebody before, "Okay, boomer." Have you ever said "Okay, boomer" to somebody?
Yes.
Have you seen the reaction that it gets out of their face? Like, the way it makes them feel?
Yes.
I only feel a little bit guilty because of my impact on another person, but only a little bit. To say that, like, I enjoyed that when somebody was just being a turd to me, right? An absolute turd to me. And I just said, "Okay, boomer." And just like the automatic, and then you get the stumbling kind of reply from it, like the, "Oh no, that's so stupid. Why would you say that?" Like, it was satisfying. So, I mean, I can't even say that, I can't just sit here and talk shit about everybody who generalizes people based on generations, because I've also, like, been a part of it. Even so much to the fact that when I'm sitting here reading the weaknesses of the baby boomers generation, I get a little frustrated because I can immediately think of examples in my head. However, if I focus hard enough, I can think of examples in my head of folks who are not baby boomers who also have these weaknesses. So we'll come back to that. Gen X. So one of their strength is, excuse me, that they're apparently the best overall workers, which is a bit of an overlap between that and the boomers. It sounds like old people work hard. These professionals are committed to juggling work with family time. So it sounds like they've less of an alcoholic. They are less of a workaholic and more apt to balance their personal and professional lives. And apparently they make the most money, which is really what we're going to hit on today. Weaknesses, apparently they hate the people that are above them. Apparently they're less inclined to speak up if they disagree with someone. And then also they have value in doing things quickly versus perfectly. So we also... Yeah. So I want to talk about these because I keep forgetting my thoughts as we jump between. So let's talk about Gen X and baby boomers before we move on to millennials and Gen Z. So what do you think? What do you think are of these strengths and weaknesses?
I can see where a lot of it is coming from. As far as like the strengths and stuff like that, I feel the work ethic, honestly, based on what I've seen, the work ethic just comes with age.
Yeah.
And baby boomers and Gen X are the ones that are being categorized because they're the oldest. So I agree in the fact that it's probably going to change a little bit once the millennials and Gen Z get a little bit older. Because like my work ethic when I was 18, I don't want to talk about it.
Same.
And that's just a part of life. I think that's part of growing up, and I don't know that it's fair to say that categorization of age is indicative of your work ethic like that.
Like being specific to a generation. You're saying,
Yeah.
I see. So let me make sure I understand. You're saying that it's not fair to give strengths, and I would even say in some cases weaknesses here of these two lists, to as attributes to somebody based on their generation, because it's, I mean, yes, generation and age are directly related, obviously, right? But you're saying that any of generations, including the 4 on this list and any that might come afterward, will also exhibit a lot of these strengths and weaknesses as they get older as well. It's not just that generation who's going to have those things.
Yeah, and that's how this list and a lot of the stereotypes are actually currently playing out, is that, because I'm a millennial, I have a shitty work ethic, and while that was true of when I was 18 years old, I mean, that it's not quite the case now.
Right. And I would say that I would even go so far as to say, and I would even say I have examples in my personal life to back it up, where people have told me that if they, baby boomers and Gen X also had that spurt, that kind of, that rush of complacency in their late teens, early 20s, where they kind of just want to chill for a little bit, or their work ethic sucked, or they were a bit rebellious, or like a lot of the shit that we're going to get into in terms of weaknesses for the millennials and the Gen Z were probably also things that the older generations experienced when they were younger as well, I think, by your theory.
Yeah.
Okay. I would say I agree with that. And I'm also saying that I would say that I also have examples in my mind, just going through these first 2 generations, of people who fall within these age categories but don't necessarily exhibit any of these traits. Like I know, and it's not like, I get it, exceptions make the rule. Is that a real thing? I've been saying that for years. Is that like a real thing?
I don't think so.
All right, let's Googling it. Exceptions make the rule. The exception that proves rule is often used to describe a case, which serves to highlight or confirm a rule which the exception itself is apparently contrary. So it is a fucking thing. I don't know where I heard it, but that's the thing. So apparently it's not a rule unless it has an exception. So says Wikipedia, and we all know that that is a very reputable source. Jenna, what do you think? Is the exception that makes the rule, is that a real thing? Someone that's way smarter than me, please chime in here. Please give me a little bit of insight onto what you think. While you are typing, let's go ahead and jump into the millennials, Gen Y. I've never heard Gen Y before. Why is it called Gen Y? Because Y2K?
Gen X and Gen Z on the other end.
Wait, really? Is that simple? Why is it called Gen X?
I don't know.
Why is it called Gen X? Oh man, I spelled that way wrong. Popular labels are applied to the generations currently living. The silent generation are those born from 1925 to 1945. So they're like, I'm so confused because that's totally wrong from what we had up here. This says 1965 to 1976. Oh, I'm so fucking confused.
Yeah, it really depends on which.
Oh no, look, this one says 1965
you're
to.
looking at as far as what the actual date ranges are.
Okay, so it says mid 60s to early 80s. I don't understand why. Like, I'm still not seeing any fucking. Oh, here we go. Generation definition. I think it is only because it falls. Well, then. Well, why? I don't understand. Z, what are they going to do? They're out of letters. Are they going to start over?
Generation AA.
A1. A2. Man, can you imagine if they say A1? That's going to be like 30 years of steak sauce jokes.
Nah, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I know you love A1, bro. Oh my God, you know what I love? So for those of you who don't know, which is probably most of you, because I've never told anybody this before, the only reason that I have access to, and struggle with the word Worcestershire sauce is because of my buddy Torgoth here. And apparently that's a whole ass thing on TikTok that it's like a meme on the internet that people just don't know how to say Worcestershire sauce. So like those late night fights, sometimes physical fights that you and I had about how to say Worcestershire.
Worcestershire.
Yeah, bullshit. There's no "ir" in there. That's according to TikTok. That's a whole ass thing. Okay, let's see. Let's catch up on chat. Before I get mad about Worcestershire sauce.
Again.
By date, I am in Gen X. By my childhood mentality, I am Gen Y because Y came after X. That's the silent generation. Is why is it called the okay? So here's another one. So why is it called the silent generation?
Probably because there wasn't a whole lot of media with sound,
This
I
says
guess.
okay. That's a really good theory. I mean. I like no, it's awesome. Normally you like fucking with me and give me like razzy dazzy answers, but you just hit me with some. That's probably actually what it is. Okay, Uh, following the oh look, this is not biased at all. The silent generation is the demographic cohort following, and I quote, greatest generation. Okay, well, why is it called this? Why is it called this? Why is it called terminology? Okay, um, okay, so apparently it's because they never use their fucking words, which is kind of hilarious. That generations are okay. So Jenna says that there's a theory that generations are cyclical.
Yeah.
Wow, that's just me projecting. I think that the next generation reacts to how the previous generation behaves. So the generation that wants to go to war creates children that are way into peace. Well, and I mean, we've seen super good examples of that. Like super good examples of that. Generation X, or excuse me, the baby boomers are the folks who had to live through world wars. So of course, well, and I think that also coincides with the prosperity that the world saw, generally speaking. I guess I would say in first world countries, because it's clearly the opposite is true post-war in third world countries, and sometimes those were created third world countries because of the war. But the point is that like along with generations that wanted peace for their next, so I would also subscribe to that theory. So are we saying that the generation that experienced that peace and prosperity, what comes next? Because their parents wanted them to have peaceful life. What happens to the kids of the folks who had peaceful life?
They don't know how to deal with confrontation, and leads to um, over exaggerations and more.
Which I mean, I would definitely see. We've seen examples of the millennials. We complain about doing the simplest tasks, referenced only as adulting, right? So, like, I mean, I can see that, but also we're talking about a generation that has seen, not to be defensive, but has seen other hardships. You know, nigh economic collapse twice, multitudes of terrorist attacks. Now kids know how to escape from school shootings, which when I was a kid, I never ever had to worry about that. Right? Like I watched people jump off of a building on TV when I was 10. So like, and then we discovered the internet. Us nerds discovered the internet. You know what I mean? The corners of the internet. Raise your hand if you remember rotten.com, which if you don't know what that is, do not put that in your browser bar. Just don't. I don't know if it's still a thing, but like I wish that somebody would have put their hand on my chest and be like, hey man, maybe don't press the return key. I would have anyway because I was stupid and young. But let's see here. Silence never use a word, so the boomers speak without thought. Wait, so I'm confused. Oh, I see what you mean. So it's the opposite. Oh, because it's cyclical. I see. Meat spin, yeah, a good example. For those of you who don't know what meat spin is, don't Google that. Just don't. And I don't want to go into all of the shitty names for shit that we saw on the internet because I'm not looking to give people trauma through curiosity. And sometimes when you see something, especially with a catchy name, you definitely get a little curious. So I'm gonna put a cork in it right there because of all of the things that you could have referenced with an infamous name on the internet, that's probably like one of the more tame comparatively, especially because speaking of our guest here, we've been exposed to that quite enough throughout our lives. See all this crap will inspire. Okay. Oh. Go ahead. What do you say?
Yeah, getting on to Jenna's point, not my. Then yeah, I hope that, like, one thing I want my children to do, and the people that I babysat, when I was younger, is to see that there is so much deranged shit in the world, and that they want to change it and to do better and to think of ways to do better. And I think that's possibly why we are getting that and then social media, more notoriety for activism.
Yeah. Well, good example too. Like Greta Thunberg, right? Tiny Kid, huge waves, huge waves. And Tiny Kid is really just me referencing her age and nothing else. Like, clearly she's done more and will do more than I probably will for the world. And that's not me being like self-deprecating. That's me like highly praising the work that she's putting in. That's a beautiful example of what you're talking about and what Jenna's talking about, in that, like, well, so what do you think causes that? Is it just is it millennials whining about it and then not like actually doing anything about it, and then Gen Z being like, all right, I guess we'll do something about it? We see examples of that. And again, we are generalizing people just to a group of age, which this entire episode is about, like, razzing on. But I mean, we also brought up that there is credit to this. I shudder to use the word science here. There is credibility to the idea that people do have some traits, or can have some traits based on their generation.
Yeah. I think what it largely is, me personally, growing up in the world and the environment that I did, and there was so much that was wrong out there, and I I didn't know where to begin to try to change it. And over the course of growing up, I have found things that have been more important to me than others.
Like what?
Um, like climate change and global warming and stuff like that. I think that we're destroying this planet, and that is absolutely atrocious. Um, versus some of the other things that don't they're not as important to me, like the malaria running rampant like Africa and things like that. So I think as people grow up, they find topics that hit more true to them, and then from there they instill those to their children, which would be the Gen Z now. And now Gen Z is rising up saying, well, okay, I know a fair amount about this one topic, why don't we change it? Let's start changing it. How do we do that? And then they actually have the focus and the drive, versus the millennials and Gen X are now trying to still provide for their families so that their children can change the world.
True. Well said. Well, and I think that this is a good example of what Jenna was talking about in terms of it being a little bit cyclical. Like, the baby boomers had, or excuse me, Gen X. No. The baby boomers did have, they were World War, right? Like they were, okay. So
Or right after World War.
Right, but they were from the parents who were in the Great Wars. So, and their parents were also, the Spanish flu was the one that killed everybody in the early 20s of the 20th century. So what is, and I want to have a whole ass other episode of how I think that coronavirus is a cosmic thing. Like, if you notice that every 100 years there's a gigantic fucking outbreak like this that kills millions of people.
I'm going back. Like, I think that Mother Nature's pretty fucking pissed about what we're
Just
doing.
Just fucking tired of us, dude. Just fucking tired of us. Baby boomers came about because of parents coming home from great wars. Okay, so but that means that they had to deal with the trauma of those wars just as much as almost just as much as their parents did, because their parents, remembered that shit and lived with that shit and mental health was a myth in the 20s, 30s, and 40s, I imagine. Just based on where we are at now, and if it wasn't a myth and it was about where it is now, then what the hell, humans? 100 years, no progress. No wonder the aliens won't say hi. Okay, so to continue to the cycle, so then we talk about the boomers who lived in a post-war mentality. Then we talk about Gen X who lived in a post-war economy from parents who were anti-war because of it, or who were anti-war because of their parents. And we're also talking about, we'll come back to the various amount of wars that our country can't seem to live without throughout the years. But so then we have the baby boomers who are grr. Then we have the Gen X's who are like, yay. Now we have the millennials who are like grr again. Because and sure, like we haven't seen a world war. Knock on wood, hopefully not yet. But we haven't seen a world war, but we have seen plenty of shit go down in the world. You know, and like you were just saying, there's plentiful economic problems, along with a relative amount of other shit. A lot of the trauma cycles that happened from the Great War in families still haven't been cycled out. A lot of families are still reeling from a lot of shit that happened throughout the years, based on people's trauma and not being able to handle it. So I would say that like I would definitely say that I've also seen examples of generations being a little bit cyclical. There, so in this case, like you said, the Gen Z is so far, and by actual evidence in the world, this absolutely is true, that Gen Z so far is the generation to go out and just fucking do things and get shit done. But I have noticed that that does cause a bit of animosity from the previous generations towards millennials. Like we wouldn't have to fucking deal with this shit if y'all would have dealt with it.
Sure.
And I am seeing that a lot of folks who are in the millennial age, especially that are getting their 30s, mid 30s, and into 40s, who are being like, okay, you know, the first X amount of my year sucked. This was shitty. Why don't we do something about it? We're having younger and younger people, like AOC, for example, jump into legislative positions. So like the millennials are starting to get out there. You know what I mean? They are starting to, what appears from the outside, probably much to the delight of previous generations, what appears to be pulling themselves up by their bootstraps, which actually means that they're just being backed into a corner, and need some sort of expression against futility here, which ends up being running for office. Have you ever thought about running for office? Like what it would be like running for office?
Actually, yes. Um, there there have been times I've contemplated actually putting myself on the ballot for local positions like county things that
And to be
people
clear,
need.
you're a millennial too, right? Just for the masses.
Yes. Yeah, 1989.
I wouldn't tell everybody your birth year on the internet, but
That's whatever. Um, but yeah, I mean, I've thought about it just to see if I could for one, but then how could I affect locally and how? I mean, because I wouldn't know anything about it. How badly would I mess everything up if I tried?
sure, sure. All that I would say, in your defense, I think one of the that's probably why you didn't want to do it. In your defense, I was gonna say how many politicians now know what they're doing, and then I was like, oh, but you don't want to just do exactly what they're doing. You want to improve if you're actually gonna. Yeah, I once was in a drunk argument with my mother's husband and his brother, who are both very conservative, traditionally conservative too, which I I heard my audience audibly groan at that. The We had an argument with him about something social. I don't remember what it was, and one of them looked at me, and it was a person who's really smart. It was, and I know that that's like really broad, but it was just that you can tell that the other person was a well thought out individual. You know, put a lot of effort into his actions and put a lot of thought into his actions, and just an intelligent overall human. Knew a lot of shit. Been a lot of places, seen a lot of things, had a lot of perspectives. Looked at me dead in my eyes after losing the argument. In my It's not my humble opinion. This is really what they said. They looked at me dead in my face and said, "You'd be a great politician." And ever since, and at the time, I was like, "Oh, gross, shudder." I would never like actually do something to change the world. Pass. Which I get why people call millennials lazy sometimes, which we'll circle back to. But the point is that now that I'm a little bit older, I think about that time sometimes, and I think to myself, that's probably what it is going to be for our generation. It probably, because a lot of offices you can't even run for until you're like 20, 25, 35 anyway, right? Like the president, you have to be 35, don't you?
Yep.
So can you imagine having your president at 35? Oh my God, who's going to be the first millennial president? Maybe it could be you. Would you like to be president?
They don't want me as president.
We have a pretty big friends group. I bet you we could get you like an electoral college vote.
That's a whole nother topic.
Yeah, it is. It really is.
Yeah.
But yeah, no. So okay, so let's dig into. So I guess to encapsulate what we've been talking about for the last holy shit, lots of minutes, is that clearly generational divides are a thing. I would say that we have many, many examples to back these up. I know that I personally begrudgingly fit many of the millennial category examples, both in the strengths and the weaknesses. But we also pointed out that it's really important to highlight that I just like emphasis on a sentence twice in a row. We said basically that a lot of these traits from these generations are actually just characteristics related to one's age, be it older or younger, apt to laziness or complacency, or kind of wanting to relax when you're younger, and more apt to be hardworking and dedicated and focused when you are older. I would also say that one is a little bit more flexible when they're younger too, and that goes away with age. But I will say that I have a lot of examples of the contrary to that, in terms of that being both an age and a generation specific thing. So I have no fuck.
I mean, for me, a lot of because I'm pretty rigid. I'll be honest, but a lot of that comes from making many poor choices and figuring out what works and what doesn't.
And so when you say you're rigid, would you say because you've put in that trial and error and you know what works and what doesn't, that you're kind of more apt to stick to what is working and less apt to try new things in the year that it doesn't work?
A little bit, yeah.
Okay.
And I think what sets me apart from the stereotype of like boomers rigidity is the fact that I'm pretty passive aggressive. So when somebody says, "Well, let's do it this way," I'm going to say, "Sure." And when it fails, I get to be, "I told you so."
My favorite subreddit, malicious complacency or malicious compliance.
Yeah. And then from there, I'd be like, "Okay, well, we tried it your way. It didn't work. Let's try it the other way." Or in the other end, if it does end up working, at least at that point, I have a conversation with the person, be like, "Okay, what can we take from both of these things to make the best way? Best practices out of both of them."
Okay, I see. So you're saying even if it does work, you're still interested in evaluating whatever the thing is to make sure that it is the best it can be in terms of efficiency.
Yeah, efficiency and long-term solution, things like that. Make sure that it's sustainable. There we go. That's the word.
Okay. Now this doesn't just apply to like the environment. It sounds like this applies to like the workplace, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
Okay. I see what you mean. Okay, so clearly there are generational traits. Clearly that those, I guess, stereotypes do exist for a reason, and that there are folks who kind of encapsulate a lot of the data within these traits. That's been established. Real quick, bruh, thank you so much for the resub. If I stream a little bit later today, make sure you come back, or on Tuesday so we can shoot your arrow for you. We're not going to do it during the show because we're not just on my time here, even though I know Torgoth would like to see me are going. So your sad face is so saddening. I will say this is not at all related to the topic, but it wouldn't be Sunday tea if we stayed on topic the whole time. You are very good at facial expressions, just across the board, just like communicating emotion with your face, which does portray you to somebody observant, and also makes somebody observant a little bit more susceptible to your manipulation, I guess. Not to sound so fucking ominous, but like you could make your face say something that you don't actually feel, and somebody be like, "Oh, this person feels this way," but you don't actually feel that way. Like you got a fucking billboard for a face, man.
Yeah, and that has haunted me in the past as I say one thing, but my face says another, and
I've been the victim of that.
Gets betrayed.
Yeah, well, I mean, anyway, I don't know. I just thought I'd bring that up while I'm sitting here looking at your face, and I was like, yeah, he does like me shooting the bow in the house. Maybe I will keep doing that. I have really enjoyed adding the shooting the target with the bow to the stream. Originally, I was going to wait until 100 subs to like unveil that and continue going forward. But then I thought to myself, I found myself sitting there all the time. I wish we could get to 100 subs so I could do the thing. So I could do the thing. I thought to myself, just do the thing. Just do the thing and think of a different reward for 100 subs. Maybe like shoot 100 balloons in a row or something. Like I don't know. But so yeah, I'm glad, and I do enjoy the fact that you and some of the other mods, like Jenna, and a few others, really do enjoy making me shoot the bow in the house every chance you get. It's just as fun for me as it is for you. So,
So
go ahead.
my reason for that is because I want to be there when I see you miss the target and put a hole in your wall.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you know, and it might happen someday. I would be foolishly arrogant to say that I would never do that, and especially because it has happened before, just not at this apartment. Well, but you know, it was always due to measures outside of my control. For instance, I never actually missed the target and shot the wall. It just went through the target, and because I had, oh, and this is okay. This is gonna sound arrogant, but it's not. I had shot the center of the target so many times that it went through the target and into the wall. So it's like you're so good at this that you caused damage when you put so much effort into not putting in damage. It still happened anyway. Needless to say, I have a new target now and a backstop behind the target for when that inevitably happens. Again, learn from your lessons. Good
Yeah,
morning, Fellowship of Awesome. What? See what we're gonna say?
the bad decisions lead to good ones.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and that's a good example of what we were talking about earlier in terms of wisdom coming with age and experience. Okay, well, we've defined and established that there is a divide and there are different traits between generations, and we've kind of talked about why it's important that we kind of recognize these to encapsulate. You know, I think that even though it is kind of garbage to sometimes classify a human because of a group that they belong in, it can sometimes be helpful. I think we also talked about it's important to recognize that there are generational traits, but just as important, it is we fuck. I was trying to like word that all snazzy and fucked it up. It's also important to recognize that a lot of traits associated with one's generation are just associated with a human being and their respective age, and experience in the world. So not necessarily by when they were born, but by what they've experienced in the okay, well, so how has this divide we kind of talked about how you and I are both millennials. Just to let's pop over here and look at some of the strengths and weaknesses of millennials, and we'll talk about if we kind of meet those, and then we'll talk about how they've kind of impacted us, relatively speaking. So it says our strengths. We are the most independent workers. We are very concerned with ethics and our social responsibility. And we have grown up sourcing information. So exactly what you were saying earlier, we've grown up sourcing our own information, so we need to be left to create our own processes and be told exactly what to do. These are apparently our strengths. So our weaknesses, due to our independent nature, millennials are not as interested in teamwork. Millennials do not have a strong work ethic, with an average of 38.8 hours spent at work compared to generations above 40 hours. The generation is impatient when it comes to career growth. 49% are likely. I want to see some fucking sources here. Maybe that's just me being defensive. 49% are likely to leave before 2 years if they feel their skills are not being developed. So I want to. What do you think about these?
Yeah.
You think they're all true?
Yeah. So I am personally, I'm not a good team player. I know I'm not. Part of that is just me being arrogant. I'm pretty sure that I can do the job quicker and better than working with a team.
Okay, but why do you think that?
Because normally the people I work with are not smart.
Through experience is what you're saying. That the reason you think this is because you've been giving repeated examples of how that is the case.
Yes.
Okay. So what about more concerned with ethics and your social responsibility? I mean, you said earlier that you care more about the environment, specifically as it relates to leaving it in tip-top shape for your children, and that you've been caring a lot more about social issues. So would you also say that millennials are comparatively speaking, more concerned with ethics and their social responsibility?
I think so.
Okay.
In the social presence has definitely grown over the past 15-20 years as the internet has become more ubiquitous. But
Oh, sorry, go ahead. Ubiquitous.
I think that it's we're not so concerned about. I don't know. I lost my train of thought.
Sorry.
It happens.
But it does segue well into the next one, which was millennials grew up sourcing information, which was kind of what you were talking about in terms of, um, we went out and we found knowledge. We kind of got a very big awareness of what was happening in the world, specifically as it relates to the negative things happening in the world, not just socially, but environmentally as well. But this one says specifically they need to be left to create their own processes rather than being told exactly what to do, which you said you definitely subscribe to. That you do try and improve it. But I would say, for me personally, I do like to create my own processes, but I like to start with being told exactly what to do. I like to see how other folks do it first. So it's not like I hate being told what to do. It's more that it kind of like what you said, that if what I'm told if what I am told to do is not as efficient as I think it could be, then I will create the own process, which I think really pole vaults us into the one of the perceived weaknesses here. It says one of the weaknesses is we do not have a strong work ethic, and the way that they back up this statement is by saying that we have a lower average worked hours spent a week. But we just said that we like to create our own processes, and we like to do so because we like to be more efficient. So is it really that we have a weaker work ethic when we get maybe even more work done in less the amount of time?
Let's see, that would be cool to see some research on, is far as efficiency in certain industries, um, as they course through time. The only thing that I can think of specifically is like the car industry, but I mean that's largely automated now.
Yeah.
Uh, but I
But
guess
that has to be maintained through
yeah, it has to be
computer
maintained, and
engineers and
how do those automation processes become in a place?
Python.
Um, so it's yeah, it's that would be an interesting topic to do like a thesis on or something like that.
Sure, sure. Well, and it does lend well to the last one too. This generation's impatient when it comes to career growth. I would say that those things are related, and yeah, fucking course we are, because like we just talked about above, we value our time and we value the fact that our attention and our time is our only resource, the only one that we have that's not renewable, that we can't get back. So of course we're worried about our career growth, and it's not necessarily if we don't. I use we liberally here, but me personally, when it comes to my career growth, I don't get impatient if I don't grow. I get impatient if I don't see a healthy trajectory between me and the company that I'm with. It has nothing to do with the fact that I'm not getting promoted, and it has everything to do with the future that I see when it comes to the relationship between me and the place that I'm working. If I would totally be happy putting in 25 years with a place that I feel like meets my values and that I feel like is in an industry that I want to work in and gives me the opportunities to learn things that I want to learn or do things that I want to do. It's not necessarily about being more advanced in my career in terms of salary or in terms of title. It's more about like how symbiotic is this relationship going to be between me and my workplace, because all all jobs all jobs are using your body for work. It just is. You're, like we just talked about, your attention is your most valuable resource. Everybody's, not just millennials, it's everybody's most valuable research. That's why the ad business is so huge, is because your attention is valuable. So think about it. When you're working, you're out there, you're earning a living, you're quote unquote contributing to society, which is an expectation given to everybody when they're young, not just millennials, but everybody when you're young. Hey, make sure you contribute to society, which is why I put it in quotes. You should again, quote unquote, should be out there contributing. Now, you're doing so with your attention, but you're giving a piece of yourself that you can't get back to somebody else's financial endeavor. Specifically, if you work in the private sector, I mean, even more so in the corporate sector. But you're really just spending something that you can't get back, pushing the wheel forward of somebody else's wagon, unless you're your own business owner, which we'll go into some other time. But the point is you're using your effort to push somebody else's car forward. So you should be compensated for it. And that is what will keep people around. Now, when it comes to promotions and career growth, like obviously as a generation that has seen two economic almost collapses or two recessions, unprecedented and never seen before, twice recessions, that like of course we're going to have a higher value on money, and they're usually and in the economy that at least Americans, because that's the only place I have experience working, in the United States, a higher title usually means more money. And conversely, you're not going to get more money unless you get a higher title or find a new job. Your wage, typically speaking, for most jobs does not go up as you spend time there, and only marginally if so. I cannot tell you the first time that I got a 12-cent raise per hour, and it was because of cost of living. So basically it was, I think it was like a 0.49% raise when the inflation that year was like 1.12%. And I was like, what the fuck? And meanwhile, the CEO of the company took home $23 million as a bonus. I said, you don't have that many employees in your company. You have maybe 2,000 employees in your company. You could pay everybody a lot more money and still walk home with millions of dollars. What are you even going to spend that money on? But yeah, no, to digress a little bit, the point is your attention is valuable. I don't think that these weaknesses on the millennial list, and again, maybe I did get a little defensive, but I don't think that these weaknesses are necessarily weaknesses. I think that they are just indicative of a prioritization of one's attention, which I think is important. I think everybody should do. I think Gen Z is doing it too, especially as it relates to their individualism. Look how many to use a buzzword, Gen Zers out there are creating their own content immediately, as opposed to us who hem-haw about it for years, or do so reluctantly, or do so and then find different creative outlets because of the attention thing that we talked about. So like so to digress a little bit, I don't think that the weaknesses here of the millennial kind of traits are weaknesses. Of course, I would say that as being part of it, but I think that we do have other weaknesses, specifically as it relates to complacency, at least socially and environmentally. And I know that I am 100% guilty of this. I know that you mentioned that you've gotten a little bit better about it, specifically after you've had kids, which makes a lot of sense, right? You want to make sure that you do everything you can to make sure that your kids have a wonderful and amazing life. But I have nieces and nephews, but that's not enough to push me over the edge to, hey, why don't we, I love it when I get the mirror effect like that. Like, when you show the stream on the stream and it's like streamception, and then it like digs all the way down. That's crazy. Anyway, I see a lot of benefits and, downsides to both of these kind of theories here. So specifically as how these traits have impacted me, I would say that I do fall into a lot of these categories, both positive and quote unquote negative. I should say quote unquote positive and quote unquote negative, and that there are also a lot of other ones listed on there, or not listed on there. One of the other things that I would say that I think millennials do well that's not really listed on there is gas up their friends. We're very attuned to the feelings of the people that we love. We're very empathetic. Our EQ compared to the ages prior to us, specifically when they were our age too, because now as millennials we can say we knew Gen Xers when they were our age that we are right now, which I know is really weird to say, and I'm sorry for those of you who are millennials who are now coming to terms with how fucking old you are. Think about it. So for many of you in here know me in real life. When I started LARPing, when I met Axcar, He was 33 and I'm
Yeah.
30. So I think to myself, what would I do if some random 14-year-old came up to the park and really wanted to LARP with us? And then I just think of all of the history that I have with the people that are older than me. You think about for those of you in here who are in the same fighting company in the LARP for the Wolves, like think about that older generation of Wolves and think about how now the age that we are right now was the age that they were when we met, when we started to learn about the LARP, when we started to learn about all of the beautiful things in the world. So we have the perspective of, like you said earlier, age and experience are related. A lot of these things do come with age, but we have examples of how some of these things didn't come with age. We have, like empathy, for example, we have far more empathy than a lot of the members of that older generation did when they were our age, at least the ones that I knew, and I know a fuck ton of them. Not necessarily the group that we were just talking about, but just generally speaking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think that a lot of it was, kind of like Jenna mentioned earlier in chat that the mentally ill were confined. So you didn't talk about that. You didn't talk about your feelings. You bottled that shit up, and you
Right.
just sucked it up
Which is why they
and
call it
carried.
the silent generation. I see.
And as millennials, and we see the boomers not being able to handle those emotions well and everything like that, we in turn open up, and like you said,
Oh
especially
yeah. Well, like just okay. I see. That's fair.
and then
So would you say that the great struggle here? Sorry to interrupt you. Would you say that the great struggle here is not necessarily one of economics or one of social? I mean, even though those are big struggles, but the big change from the previous generation to our generation, meaning from Gen X to Gen Y / millennial, would be the empathy then?
is definitely a factor. Yeah, I mean, I know that my brother is um, a Gen X, yeah, Gen X, and same thing. I mean, he doesn't really open up, and the few times that I have seen him open up about his feelings to me and my siblings, he just doesn't know how to process it.
I see. So specifically in terms of how this divide has impacted us in our lives, we have experienced the privilege of being able to be more empathetic and to have more outlets to express ourselves and to communicate and to like vent and I know if I asked all of the folks who were of the Gen X generation in my life, hey, do you go to therapy? And all of the members of the millennial generation in my life, hey, do you go to therapy? There would be I assume there would be a pretty big disparity between the amount of people who answer, yes, I go to therapy, or yes, I've been to therapy, or yes, I've benefited from therapy, because it is a privilege that not everybody can afford all the time. So, TLDR, I agree with you, and I also will say that I have noticed that I am much more apt to talk about my feelings and just empathy and talk about empathy in general relative to people I know who are a little bit older than me. Huck said in chat a little bit ago, I'm not old, dot, dot, dot. And then Huck said that they were 27, so they're old. You're almost 30. That's when you get the big 3-0. I will say so far 30 has been bitching for me. Like, yeah, it sucks that we're in a global pandemic and I can't go anywhere, but like in terms of emotionally and shit, I don't know how to word it. Spiritually, emotionally and spiritually, 30 has been great. Like the amount of fucks that I have to give, I talked about this on stream a little bit last week, but the amount of fucks that I have to give since I turned 30 to things that don't benefit me or that are not symbiotic to me is great. They're gone. They don't exist. It's fucking awesome. Wait, why is 30 old? Because because all millennials are 30 old, and as we were 30 old, and as we were just talking about, millennials like to whine about things without doing anything about it. So this is the next big thing that we're gonna whine about, is being 30.
Yep.
So anything older than 30 is old. I'm sorry, everybody in chat over 30, if you just found out that you are old. What's up, Silver Smoke? I define as old as no longer being able to do the things I loved when I was young. Well, then I'm definitely old. Shit, if I wish that I could play shooter games like I could play shooter games when I was younger, I would be like, I would be up there, right? I would be able to play video games with Tim the Tap Man. Can you imagine how confusing it would be to have two bulky, bald, redheaded, bearded dudes in the same room? That would just be, yeah. No, I and so Huck, by your very definition, I bet you were more flexible when you were young than you are now. If I'm wrong, correct me. But I bet if we dug deep enough, if we got to know each other, spent enough time getting to know each other, we could find things that you used to love that you could no longer do. So you're old. You're a yoga teacher. Shit. Oh, let's talk off stream. I want to learn more about yoga. That is a hell of a workout. Torgoth, have you tried yoga?
I have not.
Okay, so you have joint issues because you're old, and you have joint issues because you're old. Yoga, I used to shit all over yoga, right? Like an ignorant fuck, I used to shit all over yoga, and then I tried it as part of the at-home. You live on, a not the first level of an apartment building, so you have downstairs neighbors you have to be thoughtful to. You can't jump around. I need a workout that I can do in my house that will actually be a workout that will impact my body in a positive way, but not be disruptive to the people around me. And yoga? Holy shit. Now that's a workout. Like I was like, how the fuck is standing in funny poses and just holding it for a minute actually going to work my muscles? And then I couldn't walk the next day.
Mm-hmm.
So how would you say, give us some examples of how the generational divide or some of the generational, actually, let's talk about this first. Let's talk about how some of the generational traits have impacted you in your life. We've kind of talked about it a little bit, but what more do you have to say on the subject? How would you say your generational characteristics have impacted you? Positive or negative?
There was a huge pressure on me from, like I said, my baby boomer parents, as well as my silent generation grandparents, to go to college.
Yes, I had that too. Like it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you know what you want to do. Just go to college, take Gen Ed, and then you'll figure it out. Don't worry, you'll figure it out.
Yeah, and specifically right after high school, like I didn't have the rest of my life to figure out what the hell I wanted to do, and that led to, failing out of college, and being in a bunch of debt.
Yeah.
But also now on the other end of that, not so much the silent generation anymore, but baby boomers are still very, much in the workplace. They're almost kind of not, but they're still a fair amount. And so now I feel the pressure that I don't have the degree, so I absolutely have to impress them, in other ways.
Other ways, eyebrows.
No, and that's driven a lot of my workforce, and what I do and how I do it, which it sounds like a negative at first, but on the other end of that, like, pretty damn hard worker.
Yeah.
I get shit done, and that pressure has molded me into, habit now.
Okay. In terms of like working hard.
Mm-hmm.
So to make sure I understand, you're saying that the expectation of you as a millennial to be a lazy piece of shit has driven you to the beneficial extreme to prove the opposite.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I mean, there's a lot of times that has also gone negative. I feel like crap, but I can't call off because that, looks negatively, in the eyes of, management or anything like that. So there have definitely been instances where I have chosen work over myself, and that is not necessarily healthy.
You choose something or somebody over yourself? Unheard of. For those of you who don't know, Torgoth here is probably, and I know a lot of people, probably one of the least likely people in my life to choose himself over literally anybody or anything else. Oh, look, this bunny in the middle of the street is going to get run over. Skirt! Get out. And he's going to walk over there and politely kick the bunny in the ass to the side of the road and then drive on. It doesn't matter if he could get hit by many cars on the way. It doesn't matter. Like, yes, oh, that's so shocking, Torgoth, to hear that you're going to put your work above yourself. But I get what you're saying. One, that is largely like I will say that is indicative of a larger economic problem that, especially that our generation faces. I think it sucks that our generation coincides with a economic stalemate that we're facing right now in terms of workers' wages and rights, quote unquote rights. I actually, it was fun talking with Habanero about that. But hey, Space Funky, good to see you. But yeah, no, I think that you're onto something in terms that we should highlight in terms of there being a moment in our economic history right now, specifically as it relates to the United States, where we can't call off, where, like you said, we do have to spend a lot of time to fight the idea that our generation, specifically millennials, are lazy and not willing to work as hard. But that does also happen at a time where workers, the impact on the life of a worker is not as considered as it should be at the corporate level. Sick time is not a standard. Maternal paternal time is not a standard. Vacation time is not a standard. Livable wages are not a standard. In fact, there are companies, Space Funky's going to love this one. There are companies out there that specifically make millions of dollars of profit on basically, for those of you who've been following the stock market, shorting people's labor value. Basically finding people that are willing to do the most amount of work for the smallest amount of money while also being able to be efficient. So they're looking for people who are desperate for jobs, who are really smart and talented individuals, and then they pay them as little as they get away with it. And every time the individual realizes what's happening, they give them just a little bit more meat on that hook to sink the hook deeper and deeper into their cheek until finally they can't leave or else they're fucked. Or if they do leave, they have to start over. So they need to have really thoughtfully prepared for it. But at the same time, they don't have these rights. And I will say a lot of companies are getting better and better about giving people, like we just talked about, the breadcrumbs that are, okay, maybe you can have this amount of PTO, but then they have policies, again, Space Funky's gonna love this one, where it is so fucking hard to accrue those things, right? Like, yes, you get vacation days, but in order to accrue vacation days, you have had to have worked 38 out of the last 40 hours. And if you take a day off, a sick day or a vacation day, a PTO day, you don't accrue more PTO. So like there are systems that are designed to exploit people's labor value while rewarding them as little as possible to maintain the highest amount of profit margin. And that does coincide very well with the generation that is already titled as lazy, who is also out to prove themselves. So I think that it's, from a capitalism standpoint, kind of a dream come true if people are looking to make money or if they're in that position. Right. So that's a really good example of how that is impacted. I will say the same. The only reason I was able to ramble off about that is because I've experienced that firsthand and I've seen what it looks like on the numbers side of things, much to the dismay of that company that I was working for. And it blew my mind, the fact that there was that much going on. Huck wants to move to Northern Europe. I'm totally down for that. I would love to move to Northern Europe. How about you, Torgoth? You want to come with us? Are you in the fam?
I'm down. Well, I mean, Europe would be nice, but I mean, if I'm gonna move anywhere, it's gonna be New Zealand. Sorry.
Yeah, that's a really good example. New Zealand is a really cool fucking country. There's a lot of TikTokers that I follow from New Zealand, and that looks like a fucking wonderful place, dude. Like a wonderful place.
So when I was a young toddler, whatever, I was watching Xena Warrior Princess, and the scenery was just so damn pretty. I looked up to where it was filmed, and it was filmed in New Zealand. So I was like, that's where I want to live.
See, mine was Lord of the Rings. Huck said New Zealand is hard to move to. That's what makes it so fucking awesome. Correct me if I'm wrong, but in order to move to New Zealand, don't you have to prove your worth to them? Don't you have to say, here's how I will contribute to your society amongst a gigantic list of other fucking things? Like, I don't think it's a terrible thing that New Zealand's hard to move to. How many times do you see New Zealand in the news for negative shit? Ever? let me rephrase, negative shit that is within their control. Of course, natural disasters, et cetera, et cetera. But how many times do you, like, that's why everybody has this gigantic dream of New Zealand, and that's why it's so fucking hard to move there, because that's what happens when government regulation is thoughtful. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm sure that there are issues in New Zealand that we were maybe not that privy to because people don't talk about it that much. But like stabbings, yeah, but stabbings, I recognize my privilege as a 6'2" bulk individual when I say this, but like stabbings are if you, how do I word this? Learn to fight. Learn to fight, because anybody can learn to fight, and to trust other humans to not harm you is your problem. That's your fault. It's very obvious what kind of evil that humans are fucking capable of. Okay, now don't get me wrong, a person can still stab you and you could know how to fight and you could die, but at that point you died in battle and you'll go to Valhalla. No, but the point is that you've prepared, you've done everything you can, and you just lost. That's nature. You were not the apex predator.
It is possible to commit no mistakes and still lose. That's not weakness, that's life.
Dude, did you steal that from somebody?
I did.
From who? That's an amazing quote.
Jean-Luc Picard.
Nice. Okay. Well, but it's applicable. It's exactly what we're talking about. Same thing for Denmark, Iceland, Finland, Norway. Huck. That's a good typo. Just because you stab them from a distance with arrows, the rest of us normies don't have that skill. Yeah, but you could get that skill. You could get that skill. You know that I laugh about that all the time. I got literal nerd chills when the protests in Hong Kong got really serious, and they showed, you know what I'm talking about? When they showed this place doesn't have guns, and then this person's shown holding a fucking modified arrow. Let me tell you what a lot of people don't know about that picture. That bow was an Olympic quality bow. Whatever that person was aiming at, I promise they hit. You know what else they were doing that not a lot of people talked about? And I will not cite my sources out of fear for incriminating myself. They were also, I thought I was the original when I had this idea, but I looked it up and I wasn't. Hong Kong did this first. They were taking arrows and they were building what we consider LARP arrows, but they were doing so out of just couch foam without like so much thought into not killing people, and putting weights in them so they would travel better. And then they were dipping the motherfuckers in latex paint and shooting the windows of APVs, of tanks. And they were shooting the windows of people's riot shields so they couldn't wipe it off, and they couldn't get tear gassed, and they couldn't get shot because they were 20 to 40 meters away with a fucking bow and arrow. This is why I will maintain, this is a weird rant to get on in the middle of a conversation about generations, but I maintain to this fucking day that the bow and the arrow is the greatest weapon system ever made. And it is also the greatest leap that mankind has ever made technologically. Think about it. How much did humans change between the time they didn't have a bow and arrow and they did have a bow and arrow? How much more food was available to us? How many more mountain lions did we not die to? How many different like materials to craft with were available to us, like birds, for example, because we didn't have to sneak up on the fucking broken ones. We just shoot them out of the fucking sky or out of the tree branches. Now, I don't want to see a goddamn person mention anything about the Aladdin, and I will not agree with the wheel or fire because I don't want to. It doesn't serve my purpose here, okay? Greatest technological advancement of all time. Thank you, Sashuna. I couldn't agree more. If you have the privilege of spamming this emote, you should right now. And if you don't, fix that. Especially if you have Amazon Prime, sub for free so that you can spam your bows. That's the marketing I'll do on that. So we have some good examples of how this divide has sort of impacted us. I don't know why I'm rushing this because we don't. Is there anything I didn't ask you in our pre-show? Is there anything you want to talk about creatively? Are you pursuing any creative endeavors these days that you want to share with the world?
Nah, I'm pretty boring.
I wouldn't call you boring just because you're not pursuing a creative endeavor. Not to mention, I've seen your fucking house in Valheim. Can't tell me you're boring. Nice try though. Okay, so then let's spend a little more time talking about how the divide has impacted us and our lives and our relationships. So I know economically myself, I know I kind of touched into it just a little bit earlier with kind of the company rant that I went on. But like economically, I've definitely experienced the same thing that you did in terms of the rush to college. It doesn't matter why, go out there and get your degree. And I get why that came from our parents, the older generation, because that was really beneficial to them. You know what I mean? Because because their generation grew up in an economy where if you had a degree, you were more likely to get the job than you weren't. But now that's not the case anymore, and that stopped being the case. Right, I would say as we started going to college, so we had no way of knowing that was going to happen. But I also too got rushed to college without any idea of what I was going to do. It also too led me to dropping out of college multiple different times at multiple different majors. And then the one that I finally did buckle down and finish, I'm not in a field where I use it right now. And I hated it. It was miserable. I didn't get like, you know what I mean? So I also too felt the rush, but then I'm also seeing the effects of an economy where I didn't get my first salaried job. I didn't actually start regularly depositing money into a savings account until 2019, until I was 29 years old. I guess I just told everybody how old I am now too. But the point
Might as well.
is that, and I can't even tell you that is a product of my complacency, because I like Torgoth here had worked job after job and put so much effort into proving myself and proving the trope that my generation is lazy wrong. And again, like we talked about, making sure that I'm getting the most value for my attention as well, which is another reason why it was so many different jobs. But it wasn't until that much later where I was actually offered an opportunity to earn a salary with a company that what felt like, jokes on me, a permanent position. So it was way into my life where I was able to do what a lot of people consider adult things. Now you have people out there that are like 22 and 23 and 24 buying a house, but they, obviously have privileges that we don't necessarily have in terms of sometimes in terms of the economic stuff that we're talking about. So economically speaking, you kind of touched on it a little bit, but how else has that impacted you? And before you jump into it, thank you, Space Funky, for that sub. If I stream later tonight, turn on your notifications, because if I stream later tonight or Tuesday, come back on Tuesday. We stream Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. We're gonna shoot an arrow for you into target back there. Oh, get my face. So make sure that you come back. We're not gonna do it during the show for obvious reasons, but. Yeah, so how about for you? I know we kind of touched a little bit on how, you also got rushed to college, but how has that impacted you economically as you aged?
Yeah, I mean, very similarly, I didn't get my my first salary job until, you know 2018, I think, or something like that. Um, and I had to work at a company for 6 years before that was a thing.
Okay.
Uh, and we're mentioning the whole, um, if they don't get promoted within 2 years, sort of thing, then they don't feel like they're being developed. I mean, I think that goes along with that. I was actually actively looking for a different job at that point in time when that position was offered to me.
Okay. So so you can't even say for a fact that was something that was offered to you out of the benefit of your skill, but only maybe as an effort of retention.
It,
Like we
it
talked about earlier, a breadcrumb to keep you on the hook.
hmm and then, as it turns out, I was with the company for 2 more years,
Sucker.
and it didn't pan out,
Yeah.
largely because that corporate mentality that was, so driven into driving people into the dirt and not actually giving a damn about their health. Um, when I'm working 60 hours a week and not getting anything extra for it, it's not healthy. And I, recognizing my privilege, I had the ability to step away from that job and find, um, another job that it pays just a little bit less. But so far, my mental health is phenomenally better. But I do have to start over.
Right. Well, and so let's talk about this. And I don't know, this is a question that just popped into my head, but it's also a really personal question. So let me know if you don't want to talk about it, but no pressure with the preface. But do you think, so what do we think? No, to keep it on topic, I fear personally that the fact that our generation has to work so hard and spend so much time. You just said you worked 60-hour weeks. not to spill your tea all over the internet, but you're a parent. Um, you work 60-hour weeks, so you probably, when you work a 60-hour week, don't have time for yourself between earning a living and fulfilling the needs. Would that be a safe assumption?
It was definitely difficult. Yeah. It felt largely like what I was doing was just, waking up, going to work for, 12 hours and or a little less, and then come back and take care of everything. Um, I did have support and everything like that through that time. Um, that it wasn't all on me. Um, I'm not a single parent, uh, but yeah, there was a lot of times where it just didn't feel like I had time for me.
Okay. Well, and you mentioned you're not a single parent too. Um, I that's its own blessing, right? It's awesome that you and your family are able to have that amount of flexibility. And you mentioned earlier that you were able to work 60 hours and be a parent because you had some support. I imagine that you also met your partner as at least part of that, which is awesome. So I'm sure but that's another example of a relationship that needs to be maintained, right? Relationships are great, wonderful things, but they also, like children, require attention and fostering growth, et cetera, et cetera. So that was yet another thing that you had to balance when you were working 60-hour weeks. And this one's pretty personal. Have you noticed, at least when you were, because not to spill your beans on the internet, but you're not working 60-hour weeks right now, right? You said you had to start over. And it sounds like you put a higher value on your time and found a place that would do that a little bit better, which is amazing, and we can get into a little bit later. But when you were really feeling that crunch, when you were really feeling that you had to prove yourself and your worth, and you were working those 60-hour weeks, we kind of talked about the struggle that it gave you in relation to balancing your personal time and your responsibilities as a parent, but also, like, I'm sure that impacted not even just your romantic relationship, but other relationships as well, right?
Oh, absolutely. That drive to prove myself and do the hours. And by the way, the company that I was working for at the time, it was not required that I worked that much, but I felt the only way for me to get promoted at that point was to work that much. That was the only way, and so that's what I did, and I did that for about 4 months. And yes, during that time, I'm sure I dropped off the face of the planet to everybody. Um, I was barely active. I didn't do anything. I didn't really talk to my friends or anything like that. And yeah, my relationship with my partner absolutely suffered during that time too. There's no question about that. Irritable, grouchy, things like that. Um, I didn't take their needs into account, um, probably as much as I should have.
Sure. Well, and I can speak from somebody who has a close relationship with you, and I'm comfortable in that assumption. And to kind of align with what Silver is saying in chat here, I speak for myself and people, I assume, agree with me when we say that, like, as people who loved you, we definitely understood, right? And it sounds like you and your partner had talked about it, and kind of worked on that, and just from what you're saying there. So just I know you didn't solicit emotional support, but as unsolicited emotional support, as a retroactive opinion, we get it. We got it. If anything, it made me love you more as a human because it showed how far you were willing to go for the people that you loved, and what kinds of things that you were willing to do to make sure that people did not have to experience the things that you experienced in life that you didn't like, right? Um, I guess I didn't
Thanks.
I didn't have a really good finale for that. I know I really built up to one. It's like when you go to the Fourth of July fireworks show and the pyrotechnician is too drunk to light the finale and kind of just falls asleep.
You get one bottle rocket.
Is it over? No, just wait. The finale's here. 45 minutes later. Yeah, I guess it's over. But yeah, so I mean, but that would be a really good example of how, again, something that we're facing. So to broaden kind of what we were talking about here, do you think that that is a widespread thing? I know that not to minimize your struggles or the things that you're feeling with, but to put kind of empathy on a broader scale here, I know that you're not the only person who kind of faced this struggle. I'm sure there are a lot of others in the chat, and I know some in my personal life too, that also had to work a crazy amount of hours and had to choose the comfort and safety of the people that they loved over actually the time they spent with the people. And that it was really hard for them. I not to spill my beans over the internet, which I guess we're spilling all sorts of say messy barbecue. I grew up with a parent that was very much so in the similar boat. My mom worked 3 jobs. I almost never saw my mom when she was home. She was sleeping when we were not to fucking bother her. And when she wasn't, we were, at a babysitter or a friend's house or a grandparent's house or whatever. So, a relationship with a parent is very important developmentally. Psychology drones on and on and on about that. So like obviously impacted me, but I would even say a lot more, even to the point to where I don't want to have kids. I won't reproduce. I'm not going to create children. I'm not going to have a bloodline legacy because I saw the response and continue to see the responsibility of parenthood and don't want it. Like it's just not something I want. Sure. In my life, which is a choice a lot of people make, but that is absolutely an example of how that kind of I guess, yeah, that would be a good way to word it, how that kind of pressure impacted a generation further down. So to I guess on my final very personal question, are you at all concerned that your and obviously we mentioned that things are a lot better now, which I'm very happy about. But were you at all concerned when you were working the 60-hour weeks that it was going to have like a lasting impact on the kids?
Oh, absolutely. I had, the mindset going in that with my first child, I missed their first steps. I missed their first words. I wasn't there for that.
What was his first words?
I'm pretty sure it was mama.
Yeah, mine was money, and then hubba hubba.
And I wanted to. I vowed, because I wanted more kids at that point, even so. And so I sat there, I was like, I will not sacrifice that again. And then it started to look as I was working those hours, and then actually not ended up getting promoted after all. There was no way. I mean, I was constantly, thinking about my child, but I didn't know how he was doing. I didn't, I wasn't there.
Which probably lended to a lot of anxiety as well.
Yeah. Especially considering my upbringing. I wanted to make sure that my kids didn't have the upbringing that I had. So that was one of my major drives for finding another place of employment.
Okay.
After the job I had decent health insurance, and we were pregnant at the time. And so I was like, you know what? I'm going to have a kid, and then I'm going to get another job. And I did. 2 months after my son was born, I got another job.
Congrats. And from what you've told me so far, it sounds like this job is fulfilling also, and that you're good at it, and that so far that they seem to kind of give a shit.
Yeah, very much so. I've had a couple of personal things come up during my employment, and each time that they have, my boss is like, "What the fuck are you still doing here?" Like,
wow.
No,
that's such a good feeling when your leader is like that empathetic, right? When I was in a manager position, I tried to do the same thing. Well, it's awesome that you work at a company that allows your boss to have the flexibility to do that too. When I was a manager, I definitely didn't have the flexibility to tell my folks like, "Why the fuck are you still here?" Then it can't, then it comes down to a do what's right or keep your job kind of scenario.
Yeah.
which is so it's really cool that you're offered that flexibility. That's awesome to hear that you're in that position now. Well, and like you said, you were pregnant at the time, so you have more time to spend with the family, and to kind of put in the time that you had thought about spending while you were working those crazy hours.
Yeah,
That's cool, man.
It took a lot of effort and everything like that, but I kept the quote in the back of my head. To obtain what you have never had, you must do what you have never done.
Love it. I use it every day. Love that quote. I don't remember who said it, and I guess I can Google. Let's Google it. To have what you've never had, you have to do what you've never done. Thomas Jefferson.
Nice.
Interesting. Can go. If there's going to be silent air, I might as well just talk to you on chat. That's awesome, Space. Congrats, dude. That's a good job. I actually have questions for you in regards to the industry sometime. I'll have to. I've learned a lot in a very small amount of time in regards to the IT industry, and it is like, holy shit! It's its own like gigantic community of shit. Like I know I've been talking about TikTok a lot, but another good example of that is TikTok has a lot of like there's like a whole ass systems engineer TikTok where people just talk about like their networking. They talk about what equipment they use, like what switches they think are best and how they best run their cables. And then there's this whole like IT security side of TikTok, and like it's crazy how many different subsectors of IT that there are and that you don't realize there are until you get to IT. You're like, oh, I want to go work in IT, and then you get to IT. You're like, can you be more specific?
Right.
Yeah, that's awesome, dude. Congrats. So to dive back into the topic, clearly there are gigantic impacts on one's life based on some of the struggles that they deal with that can be attributed to where they are generationally. We've also spent a lot of time talking about how some of these traits or stereotypes of generations exist for a reason, and we've also taken the time to debunk some of them. Most recently, as an example, we just got done talking about how Torgoth here put in a massive amount of work to make sure that he was able to raise a family and also provide for the family, and him and his partner, worked through it to make sure that they did what they had to do. Everybody's happy and healthy, and I think that's a beautiful example of how not all millennials are lazy, and how defining an entire generation by trait like laziness is only going to fuel that generation to fight against it. So really thanks for sharing that with us. I appreciate you willing to dig into personal stuff on a talk show, which doesn't matter how many people hear, 1 or 1,000, it's a talk show. It's only a talk show because we said it's a talk show. So thank you for on my talk show. So here's the big question, and we can start to draw a conclusion from it too. What the fuck do we do about it? Is there something to be done? You're already putting in the Lord's good work by working 60-hour weeks, and you're out there being a glaring example of how millennials are not lazy and how millennials are using efficiency to propel success in the workplace. Yeah, what any ideas when you're sitting here thinking about the generational divide and generational classification? Do you also happen to stumble upon any proposed solutions?
For me, again, personally, it's trying to raise my sons to not have the stereotype mentality, to look at each person individually and objectively, and draw your own conclusions based off that person rather than an age. Which, being in management previously, is still something that I myself am working on. But I try and do better and be better, and calling people out for the shit that they do.
Yeah. Well, that's a really good place to start to be the change that you want to see in the world. And I think it's awesome that you, as based on what you literally just said, recognize that there is a responsibility as a parent to leave a lasting impact on another human being going forward. Like, you have the responsibility of molding this human being into who they're going to be. Well, partially, right? We did talk a little bit about how both nature and nurture, in a few episodes ago, talk about how both nature and nurture play a part in one's development. But like the nurture part of that, you're trying to make sure that is beneficial not only just to your family and your family's family, but also the world going forward, which is pretty awesome. You know, so, and that does kind of lend to the cyclical ideology that Jenna pointed out earlier, and that generations are cyclical. And it sounds like, and I have seen that Gen Z, as compared to millennials, even though I would say millennials are far more empathetic and have a higher EQ than the preceding generations, I would say that Gen Z has shown examples of that same, if not sometimes more, empathy. So I think that cycle is going to continue. But I mean, so to come back to the question, what do we do about it? You said that we have to make sure that when we're teaching, we teach a understanding and awareness that these classifications exist, and to not purely subscribe to it when we reference another human being.
Yeah.
Okay. Silver, thank you so much. Just called us gorgeous and then said he wasn't joking. Thank you. I tried very hard today. I wore this very nice oversized sweater. 2020 and 2021 have been pretty great for, well, also pretty bad for seeing comfortable clothes on the internet and then buying comfortable clothes on the internet. The amount of time I spent in comfortable clothes versus non-comfortable clothes is very lovely to me these last couple years. I think that you're really onto something with making sure that we lead by example, just to paraphrase, for our future generations in awareness of kind of this issue, specifically the generational divide and classification of people based on their generation. I think that also something that I try to do is recognize that this kind of classification does sort of exist for a reason, but also with the caveat that you just hit the nail on the head 5 minutes into the show, that a lot of the things that we associate with the person's generations actually has nothing to do with their generation. It has to do with how far they've come into their life and the experience that they have. So, if you specifically stick to this person's from this generation, they must be this, and this, you're going to miss a lot of opportunities to connect with other human beings because you've limited yourself based on something that may or may not be true. And furthermore, you may miss out on something awesome because you didn't give that person enough room to show you what they had learned in their life so far. Because yes, experience is related to age, but it's not only gained through age. I know some 16-year-olds that have a higher idea of what's going on at a widespread level than some 45-year-olds do. So, perspective is subjective. Oh, that's a good band name, dude. Perspective is subjective. I'm going to write that down. Holy shit. I actually started a whole ass page so I could start remembering these. Because, one day somebody's going to come up to me and be like, bro, we have this amazing band. Listen to this. But we just can't figure out a name. I'll be like, oh, here's a list. Perspective is subjective. I love it. Could even be an album title. Yeah, but no, I think that is a really good kind of takeaway is, be the change that you want to see in the world to the future generations, but also kind of be the person that you want to be, and don't be afraid of those traits, because just because they're perceived strengths or weaknesses does not mean they are, right? Be true to yourself, and which I'm recognizing is a common theme for the show, be yourself. But it only highlights its importance the more times that we circle over it. Be yourself. But yeah, I what else do we have? I don't know if there is that many more things that we can quote unquote do about it. I don't think that personally, from what we've talked about and discovered, that the generational divide outside of a showing empathy for other people and trying to do your best in the world is like a gigantic world-ending problem. You know what I mean? And I think, and I hope this doesn't sound cynical because I don't feel cynical about it, but I don't think that there's anything that we can fucking do about it because the quite simply put are actually differences between the generations in terms of trait. Now that doesn't mean, like we said earlier, that there aren't exceptions. Exceptions do make the rule. We do know thing that I didn't just make up. Very validating. But exceptions do make the rule. So there are traits that can define a generation, but that doesn't mean that every person in that generation must be confined to those traits.
Yes.
Yeah. We can make them disappear. All right, Liam Neeson, slow down. Slow down, Huck. So let's ask this. Let's open it up to chat. Huck, this is a bold statement. We can make them disappear, especially after we've established that while they can be harmful, they have also been helpful. It is helpful to know that a person of a generation may exhibit these traits because then you know what to ask, you know what to look for, you know what to expect. So for instance, if I hire somebody who's a millennial, I'm going to use process of elimination to see if this person is also an efficiency-minded person. If not, then I'll adjust accordingly. But that is going to be where I start when I try to figure out what this person's work style is. As similarly with older generations, if I run into an older generation in my job, and I'm going to ask this person right off the bat what their computer knowledge is before I try and help them diagnose an issue, instead of just assuming that they have a general use of computers just because they're a little bit older. And it's not to say that I am automatically just assuming this person doesn't have that knowledge, but I am going to understand that this person might not have had the immersion technology that younger generations had, just in this example. So I think that there are beneficial aspects to the generational traits that we're talking about. I think specifically we should address the divide that they cause in terms of people hating each other because of their generations. Which we're also getting, we're seeing a lot. I hear all the fucking time at my job, and all the jobs that I've ever fucking had, somebody talking shit about some other generation, whether it be millennials talking shit about boomers, or boomers talking shit about millennials, or Gen X talking weird ass shit about Gen Z. Like Gen Z, I honestly love Gen Z. It blows my fucking mind. It is really cool to watch an entire other generation come to terms with their adulthood, because it's given me a lot of perspective on what it must have been like to know me when I was that age. Similarly, Torgoth, as an example, Torgoth's struggle in balancing time with personal responsibility has also given me a new light into some of the struggles that the people who raised me were facing also, for an example. So I think it's pretty fucking cool to observe, but it also does help to have general guidelines of how to interact with people that you don't necessarily click with right away when you have some of these traits to be able to start off with. You know what I mean? So Huck says we can just download them all. Oh, I don't know why I didn't think about that. We could have just saved 2 fucking hours if we just said that right at the beginning of the show. Okay, here's the issue. Let's just download them all. That is an example of positive profiling. Is that a real thing, positive profiling?
Google.
That sounds like a fucking social justice trap waiting to happen. Positive profiling. Oh, here we go. Screen cap. The newest tool in fighting fraud, positive profiling. If a new customer's transaction is declined because it looks high risk, problematic, or if they abandon their purchase because of extra security measures that create friction in the buying process, that customer is unlikely to come back. What I want to know how they define high risk. See, look, the very first, this is why I said it sounds like a trap, because the very first suggested to see results about is racial profiling, which is not a positive thing. And this is civil liberties. Yeah, that just sounds like, positive profiling sounds like something police made up to make it sound better when they shoot somebody.
Oh.
Too soon? Too soon?
I hope it wouldn't be too soon, but the way the country's going, I don't know.
Sounds made up. But I see where Silver Smoke is coming from in that it's a good example of the way that you can use the traits that somebody might have to start to build a connection, either through process of elimination or process of confirmation.
Yeah, I mean, I've done that during the hiring process too.
For sure, for sure. Huck gave us an ACLU link. It's must be credible. They even use HTTPS. Take a peek.
That means it's secured.
That should mean it's secured. Let's see. Holy shit, Huck, that's an article. Well, y'all can go read that. It's a safe link. But the point is that they're kind of springboarding off of what Silver Smoke said in terms of there being benefits to being able to quickly classify a person, which we know is also dangerous, more often than not, in fact, but that there is a non-zero benefit to it, which I think we all kind of knew. That was like, but that's like the unspoken thing in the house. It's like, yeah, it's good, but it causes more harm than it does good. So we're like, it's good. It's like communism. It's good in theory. You know what I mean? But when applied to the human element, it's more dangerous than anything else, I think. Mine was referring to the computer usage thing. Oh yeah, no, but that's what we're talking about. That's a good example. It's a good example of a way that you can use an idea of what the idea of what traits a person might have as a starting point to get to know that person, not necessarily to classify that person in your mind, but a good point to start with your questions. Because the only way that you learn something is through questions. Whether or not you ask them is a completely different story. So, all right, well, let's start to build a conclusion here. It sounds like so far we've recognized that there is an issue. We've talked about how it impacted us. We've talked about some of the marginal things that we can do. But unlike some of the other episodes, we also kind of talked about how this can be somewhat beneficial. So what ideas have you to encapsulate this discussion? I think so. We can say that. Man, this is a tough one.
Yeah,
I don't even know where to fucking start. What about you, chat? What are you thinking? Conclusion time, baby. Oh, I want to say. Okay, here we go. That could have saved us. So that's going to be the conclusion. Just download it. That's what we're going to put. Just download it. It's going to be like Nike, but for generational gaps and perspectives. Just download it. Did you change that to fuck off? That's hilarious. I just looked at the itinerary. So I liked the point that we made in terms of there being a lot of these traits that come and go with age. I like the idea that we should reference age here. Let me get over to where are we? Shit. That's a lot of words. Okay, we'll come up. So conclusion time. Age. I hate the phrase age is just a number because I feel like it's more of a weapon.
Equal generation.
Okay. So how about? Oh, I like that. What about experience comes with age, not your birthday? Not birth times. That's kind of the same thing. Here we go. Experience comes with age. Everybody knows. Age equals perspective. That's true. Oh.
That's not bad though.
Oh, yeah. We should have just downloaded them. Fuck, I've never really struggled this hard. Normally I could just rattle the fucking thing off and it sounds good and we wrap it up.
So experience shapes perspective.
Okay. I like that too. I'm gonna write down that. Experience is hard to spell. Comes with, what'd you say? Experience shapes perspective?
Yeah.
Shapes perspective and Silver said age equals perspective. Perspective, hard to spell. Shuna says experience is earned, not achieved through age. Good one. Earned, not achieved through age. Oh, I like that. Okay, so let's say that okay, a life cannot be described by its creation time, but by the experience. Here we go. By the life shaped through age and experience. So a life cannot be described by its creation time. We should say defined by its creation time, but by the experience. Okay, by the experience shaped through time and effort.
Yeah.
I'm not 100% sure what we're wrapping up. I've just been walking Cosmos. So we're kind of just coming to a conclusion of the whole show. We talked about, at the beginning of the show, we kind of defined what the generations are. We talked about what kind of divides that we've seen between the generations. We also brought up the fact that a lot of the proposed differences between the generations are not actually differences between the generations, but actually just attributes associated with the human being and their age / experience in the world. We also kind of talked about how, and this one's not necessarily related to the conclusion, but more of an example of how it's impacted us. We also talked about respectively how the generational divides and assumptions have impacted us and some of the struggles that we faced based on where we are in our lives and where the world is in its life. But we're currently trying to wrap up, and then we talked about what we can do about it. So we're basically trying to draw a conclusion, a 1 to, 3, but I like to keep it at 2, a short and sweet conclusion to encapsulate what we've talked about in terms of its difficulties, its benefits, and what we can kind of do about it, or at least, and if sometimes there are things that we can't do about our topics, but there are things that we can walk away from the conversation with. So let's catch up on chat. Make time for your damn self. I think that's a really good life lesson, generally speaking, for sure. Abso-fucking-lutely. Stealing from Jenna earlier, the line about knowledge not being something. I'm not 100% sure. Oh, yeah. Information does not equal knowledge. Never mind. I guess that wasn't age, but it's relative. I see the bridge that you drew for sure. Be good people and support our neighbors. Hell yeah, Space Funky. I love that conclusion. However, we have put that general idea in like the last 9 conclusions.
And this is a tough one too.
This is a really tough one. So far we have a life cannot be defined by its creation time, but by the experience shaped by its experiences. By the experience shaped through time and effort. That makes sense?
Yeah.
Do I have Grammarly? Anybody else want to run this through Grammarly? Tell me what they think. I'm uploading everywhere. You said downloading, Huck. I need you to make a damn decision here, okay? And I need to know what internet connection you have, because that really, that's really going to determine your download and uploads. That will really determine what we choose here. Oh, have you all seen, Goth, have you seen Altered Carbon?
No.
Really? Anybody else? Altered Carbon? That show's fucking cool. Not to spoil it because it's right at the beginning of the show, but the whole premise of it is they perfected the science of mapping a brain and memories and experience, and when a person, I think, is born, they take all of that and they put it into like a little chip, or they basically turn it into data, and then they put the data onto a chip, and then people can copy it and back it up. And the long story short is the bodies are all biomechanical, and they're called sleeves instead of actually bodies. So rich people are immortal because they just change their sleeve when it gets old, or they can make it like where it doesn't age or whatever. It's a pretty cool fucking show. And I will say it was a very convenient way to recast the main character between X-Ray Blacksmith. You got here just in time, bro. 1 o'clock on the dot. I guess it's 1:02. So what do y'all think about the conclusion here? I'll put it in chat so y'all can see what it looks like on quote unquote paper. A life cannot be defined by its creation, time, but by the experience shaped through time and effort. I really want to say experiences, because it's more than one. Would that be?
I mean, if you're saying a life experience, then it's still singular.
But that's just one of the experiences that happens in life.
Well, I'm just saying life in itself is an experience.
Sure, in that context, but when life is an experience because of its experiences, right?
Yeah.
Yes. For those of you who don't know, I never get that. That's a once in a lifetime victory for me. Okay, so by the experiences shaped through time and effort. Cool. I like time and effort. Life's experiences. All right, Bo, enjoy the remainder of your Super Bowl Sunday. Hey, Space Funky, thank you for stopping by. I appreciate you being here. Go Chiefs. If you're a Tom Brady fan, you can suck my toe. Because they beat the Packers, and I don't care how good he is. Aaron Rodgers is better. Just yard for yard. You know, I really would like to know, do you think that the refs in the NFL have rules to where they're not allowed to, like, bet ever? Think?
I hope so.
And otherwise...
there is no governing body over the sports like industry sort of thing.
Yeah.
So there's nothing preventing the NFL commissioner or anybody else in any other major league or minor league from rigging the game in and of itself.
You know, I'll be honest with you. I do have I have the feeling that a lot of the NFL games are, it's like wrestling. I feel like it's like wrestling. You know, it's like stage for entertainment. And and if you think about it, there's a lot of
beautiful and
excuse
talented.
me, ma'am. Thank you. I opened Twitch on another tab and I forgot to mute it. The is that Shaq? Holy shit. The
Okay.
sorry. What was I talking about? Oh yeah, I totally think all the games are rigged. I do. Shaq looks fucking ripped, dude. Like, for somebody who's in his 50s, Shaq is a force to be reckoned with. A good example of, you know, what taking care of yourself and being super rich and famous will do for you. They 100% have those rules. Remember? No, man, I don't remember. I don't know the shit about sports, bro. The only reason I know anything about football is because it's a good way to be social with people, and it's the only sport I have any idea or any interest in putting any effort into in terms of learning. Now, that's not necessarily true. I do want to learn more about hockey, and I enjoy watching hockey, but the time requirement for watching football versus any other sport is so much different, because football happens 2 to 3 days a week. You know what days they are, you know what times they are, and hockey and baseball and basketball, all that shit just happens. Like, there's 400 million games and it's on at all given times of the day, and I just don't have time for that shit. Like, I like the structure of football. Archery is a sport, it's true, but it's not a widely televised sport. And I do watch a shit ton of competitive archery. Shout out World Archery, # not sponsored. So, go ahead.
Back to our conclusion.
Yeah, I was gonna say, back to our conclusion to wrap it up. I really do like a life cannot be defined by its creation time, but by its experiences. It's no apostrophe. Experiences shaped through time and effort. Anybody else? Oh, dude, drone racing is so fucking cool. I think that
the best we got for conclusion.
Yeah, you don't feel, you just.
I think that accurately summarizes what we've been talking about.
Cool. I think so too. Awesome. Well, you know, and that's one of my favorite ways to get the conclusion is to just write down what everybody says and figure out a way to mash them all together in a really pretty way. It's almost like the 2 years of being an English major paid off just a little, specifically in the terms of not using two commas. So, all right, well, that's awesome then. Let's go ahead and start to wrap it up. The question I like to ask everybody, but I forgot to ask Ruff, and it haunts me daily. How did the time go for you?
Quickly.
Yeah,
very quickly.
Zoomed by. I cannot believe it's already 1 o'clock. It happens for, you know, and I expect it every week. Oh, this is going to be the week where time slows down and we're going to have a hard time filling the conversation. But boom, then it's 1 o'clock. And I'm like, holy shit. So, but all right, see you later, Space Funky. And that is going to be it for us too, for the show. Everybody, I really do appreciate you being here. Torgoth, thank you so much for taking time out of your very important nobleman's day. I know that owning your own lands and being the ruler of your own magistrate is not an easy thing to do. So thank you for leaving the tower. But no, for real, like we talked about, you're a busy dude with a lot of important things going on in your life. So I do appreciate you making time in your day to come and be on my talk show. Like I say every week, this wouldn't be nearly as fun if I didn't have an amazing group of friends and family that are willing to kind of participate and be in the crowd. You're in the crowd every week. You're in the crowd every time I stream. So I just greatly appreciate you, and thanks for coming on, dude.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Hell yeah. Anything you want to say before I kick you out of here?
Nope.
A man of many words, ladies and gentlemen, Torgoth of Dundrum, once a humble peasant, now ruler of his own lands. I hope you have a good rest of your Sunday, dude. I'll talk to you on Facebook when we were talking about the Chiefs.
Sounds good.
All right, dude. Bye. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. 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 Okay. All right, everybody. Wow, my camera's like all in my mouth, huh? I guess I just need to sit up. Everybody, thank you so much for coming to the show. We are going to send it off with a raid. We're going to go tell somebody some buddies in this case, that we love them. Stick around. I want to, again, acknowledge the fact that you guys, sorry, typing. I want to again acknowledge the fact that y'all come by every week. You say hi to me, you hang out with me, you be a part of the show. It's really great to have y'all in here and to see your inputs. We had 2 new subs today. Make sure y'all come back for Tuesday. I might stream a little bit later tonight. We'll see how far I get with editing and chores, and if I fucking feel like it. Otherwise, come back on Tuesday. Make sure you turn on your notifications. For those of you who are new here, we do this every Sunday, 11 a.m., Bowborne. Sunday Tea with Bowborne and the Archers. We have a show sheet on YouTube. It basically is a list of all of the topics that we're doing. Stay tuned, everybody. We're going to be adding more topics by the end of this week for March. So if you see any that you're interested in, make sure that you DM me so we can set up you being on the show. Yeah, and I think that, next week's episode is going to be fun. It's Valentine's Day, so we're going to be doing a love episode 2 with Bad Wolf Handmade. Make sure that you come back for that, especially if you're single and lonely like the rest of us. So, all right, everybody, let's get this raid moving. Let's see if I spelled it right. I did. Awesome. Again, not to drone on, but I need something to talk about while I wait for the raid to ready up. Thank you for being here. I will continue my efforts to look, or we can wait a second, but let's go ahead and send that raid on over, and I hope, let's see when they're coming back. Hold on, where's my mute button? Where's the mute button? Oh, they're having some issues here. We should wait for the raid so that they don't feel more pressure. What's everything okay? Everything okay? It's anybody else? Okay, there we go. Oh, they fixed it. We know what that is. All right, I'm sending the raid over, everybody. Have a good night. In true stream fashion, we're going to just cut out without saying goodbye afterward, just in the middle of the sentence. We're just going to send it.